Okay, so I'm teaching from my deck this morning. I don't right now hear a lawnmower, a leaf blower, or a dog. Those things could happen, and then we let them be a part of our yoga practice. When my teacher and my co-teacher are finished in my yoga room, I'll move us inside because it is better sound for me and I have more space and all the yoga props that I want are in there. So I'm going to ask us to start with a comfortable and upright seat. And I will say for those who weren't here yesterday or the day prior, we are kind of doing a deep dive right now into how the pelvic basin, including the pelvic floor and the hips, how that supports us as both physical health and also mental health. So please take a comfortable seat, an upright seat. And you can rest your hands in your lap where you'd like them to be. And you're welcome to close your eyes if that's your preference for how you start your practice. And let your attention sort of filter through first the surround of your environment. You can sense the temperature of the space in which you are sitting. Sense the quality of the light that's filtering into your space. Sense the sounds that are in your environment. And sense anything about fragrance or aroma. And any sensations related to taste. In the psychology and philosophy of yoga and the chakras, we associate at the first chakra the sense called smell. And the second chakra is the sense called taste. And in our physical asana practice, we give less attention to smell and taste because physical sensation can seem so strong, and because we are accustomed in daily life to having a lot more activity at the ears and the eyes. But these are the first two senses. We begin with smell at the first chakra and taste at the second chakra. First chakra is the element of earth. Second chakra is the element of water. So when you sense, smell, or taste in this moment, also catch a glimpse of how subtle it might feel to you. In contrast to the sense of sight, the sense of sound, the sense of touch. And for your practice today, I'm going to recommend that you bring all five senses back home and imagine seating the senses together like a little wise council, seating them together in the pelvic basin, in the second chakra. Our senses are one of the ways that we explore the world before we have words, before we have language, before we have cognition. We have our senses through which to explore the world. As you bring your senses back home to the low belly, to the pelvic basin, now place one hand on your lower abdomen and one hand on your solar plexus. And with your inhale, begin the breath at the pelvic floor and then let it fill out this pelvic basin, front and back and sides. And then let the breath fill out the mid-torso. solar plexus, side ribs, back ribs. And when you exhale, blow out your mouth like a tiny straw, and notice the increasing tone you can make from your pelvic floor inwards towards your sacrum, upwards towards your solar plexus. Then you have to delicately release the exhale contraction and welcome the inhale expansion. Likewise, with the inhale expansion, you have to turn delicately to the exhale contraction. So imagine each inhale and exhale like on a dimmer switch. The movement is gradual, thoughtful. Both expansion and contraction increase towards the end of inhale and exhale. When you blow out like a tiny straw through the mouth, you're slowing down the pace of the exhale. We'll do it twice more. Let's see if your exhale might be a little bit more complete. And as you complete the next exhale, relax your breath and simply bring your palms to your heart. And we'll chant together Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha, the Gayatri mantra. Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha, Tat Savitor Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayata. Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha, Tat Savitor Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayata. Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha, Tat Savitor Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayata. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. With your exhale, you may bow your head to your heart. And release your hands. Please open your eyes. So here's a little psychology about yoga and the chakras, which I have a sense of great affection for what I'm going to share with you, and also a kind of endearment that human nature is just kind of difficult to live with itself. So at the first chakra, we have this imperative for safety, stability, security, and we access those qualities in relationship with others. We are totally dependent on other to provide that sense of original safety, security, and stability. When we become, though, yogis, you're on the path now. You have another surge through the chakra system many times in your life. You are now responsible for helping your sense of safety to be there. You are still dependent on others, but you have more leadership than you did when you were an infant. You understand what I'm saying? Then if that safety and stability are there, we can move up to the second chakra, where our senses have this like a revival, this revolution. They blossom. And the senses can either pull you away from home all the time, like seeking, craving, grasping, clinging, desiring, seeking, craving, grasping, clinging, desiring. Your senses can pull you away from home all the time. Or your senses can help you to feel at home in the present, each sense being an anchor to the freshness of the present moment. So when we help our senses to be less like wild monkeys, they sometimes call them wild horses in yoga. When we help our senses to be less like wild horses, we actually nourish our vitality. We are more like a vessel for vitality and less like a spaghetti strainer. Where the vitality, you keep pouring it in there, you eat well, you take the supplements, you have the yoga, you keep pouring it in. With the spaghetti strainer, the vitality just keeps dissipating. If we have enough vitality, we can move up to the third chakra and tap into discernment, purpose, and a healthy sense of self. So those are the imperatives that we're going to be working with this morning. And I'm really focused on the second chakra right now because these 5 wild horses, they pull you away from home. You have already experienced this at some point in your life, but you've also, from your yoga, experienced coming home, coming back home. So that is what we're here for. So please come up to standing. I'm going to carry you into my yoga room and come up to standing in the wide stance that we often start class with. You can see my garden behind me for a moment. See, those are the grapes. They provide the only shade on the deck. So come up to your wide stance, and what we'll do is Susie can go to my phone camera. I'm going to plug in my microphone. Okay. So with the wide stance that you're taking, make your feet parallel and come down to Prasarita Padottanasana. Yeah. You can use the blocks to make the floor closer if you need to. Okay, when you come down to Prasarita Padottanasana, start breathing in through your nose to touch the pelvic floor with the inhalation. Breathe out through your mouth like a tiny straw, and you'll be noticing there's a consistent increase in the tone of the pelvic floor as you do that. Yeah. Let's do that 5 times, please. With the inhale through the nose to lightly touch the pelvic floor. And exhale out like a tiny straw, slowly, slowly. Notice even how the tone can go from the pelvic floor up towards the second chakra. You could imagine that you're greeting this council of senses, the 5 senses. And then you inhale to expand the pelvic floor once again. And last time, exhale like a tiny straw. And then walk your hands and your feet into downward facing dog pose, Mukho Adho Svanasana. Now in downward dog pose, because your legs are more parallel, very different than in Prasarita Padottanasana where you have that wide stance, in downward dog you have to concentrate a little bit more on the inhale, expanding the pelvic floor. The inhale wants to do that for the pelvic floor, but we tend to hold tension patterns that we're unaware of. So see what it's like to invite the expansion. And on the exhale, you can now exhale through your nose. On the exhale, try to sense how the pelvic floor tone becomes deep low belly tone, as if you're going from the first chakra to the second, and you're greeting that little council of senses to say, hey, we got you. Life is filled with vitality and creativity. Life does not need to be constant mayhem for your senses, filled with craving, aversion, and desire. Now, in your downward dog pose, with your feet parallel, start walking your hands backwards into Uttanasana, so that as you're walking back, hand to hand, small steps, you arrive in Uttanasana. Totally fine to use your blocks if you need to. And when you inhale, glide your heart forward, open your chest and your throat and your eyes. And then exhale through your nose and bow deeply towards your legs. Let's do that again. Inhale and glide forward. The breath first expands the pelvic floor slowly, and then broaden into the back of your waist, your heart, lift into your collarbones. Exhale to bow towards your legs, the exhale breath beginning at the pelvic floor. And then please take your hands to your hips, rise up to standing, and step your feet into the jazz dance warm-up pose. Turn your toes out and come down with your hands on your knees. And in this jazz dance warm-up, we're going to stay for a short while, so make it comfortable and then bow your head gently a little bit towards the floor so your eyes will be inward. So this is a position where you can do some really beautiful work on refining your relationship to the breath and first, second, and third chakra. So when you inhale, the inhale will begin expanding your pelvic floor, then it comes to the sacrum, the back and sides of your waist, and let it be at its widest point around your ribs. So the inhale concentrically expands. And when you exhale, begin at your pelvic floor, specifically from your pubic bone towards the center of the pelvic floor, up the sacrum on the front side, and then up towards your solar plexus. Try that 3 times more, please. Notice that each exhale is an opportunity to practice refining your care for your mind, your senses, and your body. And really specifically how you transition from the top of the inhale to the start of the exhale, and how you transition from the bottom of your exhale into your in-breath. Those are very precious moments to pay attention. Here's the last exhale. Now press into both feet, and while keeping your knees pointing out, see if you can stand upright here and take the tailbone down, lift your pubic bone up. And notice that to take the tailbone down while your legs are turned out like this, your toes are turned out, you might feel a little bit more activation at the back of the sitting bones and at the back hemisphere of the pelvic floor. That would be a natural consideration. This is external rotation for your legs. Now turn your feet to parallel and notice the change in the shape of the pelvic floor. You might feel more equal, back hemisphere, front hemisphere of the pelvic floor. And then take your heels out and your toes in. And it will change again the shape of the pelvic floor. And that's happening based on the rotation of your legs and how your body is going to orient. So let's go back to toes pointing out, knees pointing out. Lift your pubic bone up. Place your hands on your front belly right here. And inhale towards the tailbone, the back hemisphere of your pelvic floor. And then exhale and bow forward with your legs straight and your knees turned out. And lift the tone from the pubic bone up into the low belly, right where your fingers are. And then inhale, rise up to standing. Root your tailbone down as you rise up. And then again, exhale as you bow forward, slide your sitting bones back, tone the front hemisphere of your pelvic floor, and lift the deep low belly in right where your fingertips are. Inhale, rise up to standing. And then exhale one more time, tone the pelvic floor, starting at your pubic bone, move towards the middle of the pelvic floor, and then up the sacrum in the low belly. Inhale, rise up, last time to rise. Make your feet parallel and exhale to bow forward. Notice the difference in the actions. Just a very small change for the legs really, but a significant change for your pelvis and your breath. So inhale, rise up. So your pelvis rotates over the tops of your thighs. And exhale to bow forward, toning the front of your pelvic floor first, and then up the center of the pelvic floor towards your sacrum and up in the low belly. Twice more. Inhale to rise. And exhale slowly forward. Inhale slowly to rise. Here's the last one to go down. Exhale. Place your hands on the floor and walk one more time into downward dog pose. This time, place your feet at the width of your yoga mat for your downward dog, to have your hands shoulder width apart, but your feet wider than your hips. Now, keeping both legs stable and strong, swoosh your hips to the right, so your left leg is still straight, but your hips are kind of, they're shifting to the right like a typewriter bar. And notice how the two hemispheres of the pelvic floor, right and left, are now different. As you exhale, tone your right outer hip and glide your hips to your left. When your left hip starts to welcome the weight into your left leg, notice that the two hemispheres of the pelvic floor, left and right, have changed. Exhale, tone your left outer hip to shift your pelvis to your right. Notice when your right hip begins to be more weight bearing than your left, and there's a change at the pelvic floor. And exhale, tone your right hip to shift your pelvis to your left. Notice when your left hip becomes more weight bearing than your right. And then tone the left outer hip to bring your pelvis just to center. And let's go toes and heels in at hip distance now. And come forward to table pose. Take one block to place under your hips to sit in zazen and come upright like this. Close your eyes and let your attention go down to the home in your pelvis. So at the first chakra, you're establishing safety by giving consistent attention without judgment and with curiosity, moment to moment, tuning in to what happens at the pelvic floor. At the second chakra today, keep your senses at home as if they live there in the pelvis. So your mind doesn't wander off to past or future, to grasping or clinging, aversion or resistance. Now I'm going to ask you to place your hands forward and once more step into Prasarita Padottanasana. I have a specific and non-linear trajectory in class this morning. So when you come back to Prasarita Padottanasana, this time walk your hands out like your arms are doing downward dog pose. But let's do it on your fingertips so there's not a lot of weight bearing in the arms. Your fingers are touching the floor for sure, but don't lean into your arms and hands. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Expand the pelvic floor, the back of your sacrum, the back of your waist. And then exhale, and with your right hip, press your pelvis to your left so that for a few moments, you're going to experience the right inner thigh seems longer than the left one. And breathe into your pelvic floor and your low belly, noticing how the shape of the pelvic bones has changed the shape of your pelvic floor. Now when you exhale, start toning your left outer hip, press into your left foot, and glide your pelvis across to your right. Then the left inner thigh will seem longer than the right. You may be catching a glimpse of some asymmetries in your body. Breathe in, inhale to the pelvic floor, the interior of the sacrum, the back of your waist. When you exhale, begin the exhale breath near to your pubic bone. Move towards the center of the pelvic floor and then up the inside of your sacrum. Release each exhale gently so your inhale is not experienced as abrupt at your pelvic floor. Now tone your right outer hip and begin to slide your pelvis to center. Walk your fingers halfway to the right, like a half circle. And draw your left outer hip back a little bit more than your right because it's going to be tempted to swing to the left. So draw your left outer hip back and press into both feet. So if you notice here in your body that your pelvis and legs now are actually symmetrical, like they are in Prasarita Padottanasana, not much change to the shape of the pelvic floor, but there is a change in the myofascial system of your ilium bones, your spine, and the organs. Like the right side of the belly is getting squeezed, the left side is becoming expansive. So as you exhale, draw from your pubic bone towards the center of the pelvic floor, up the interior of the sacrum, and notice your left low belly a little bit more than your right. And then when you inhale, walk to the other side about halfway to your left. So what's going to happen here is
You'll place the fingertips and then pull your right hip back so your pelvis is pretty symmetrical to where it was in Prasarita Padottanasana. And relax the weight of your head and let your consistent and kind attention come down to your pelvic floor. The sensation of the inhale touching the pelvic floor is really subtle. Let the breath come up the interior of your pelvis into your right lower back. And when you exhale, tone from your pelvic floor towards the center of the pelvis, up the inside of your sacrum and into your right low belly. And do your best to keep your attention and your senses housed within the pelvis. Walk your hands back to center, please. Place your hands up on your hips and rise up to standing. And step your feet into mountain pose. When you come up to mountain pose, just observe where your attention and your energy are. Where do they go? Try to be a witness, an observer, not a conductor. So where does the mind go? What's happening in your physical body? What's happening with your senses? Now I'm going to ask you to take a blanket and roll it up. We're going to be using it for your feet. So when you roll the blanket, you can open it once, so it's going to be a longer blanket. So when you roll it, it's less kind of thick and foreboding. So rolling it like so. And then place your toes up on your blanket, please. And let's see if you're able to stand here. If you can stand upright with your toes up on your blanket and your heels on the floor. So a temptation is going to be to shift your hips back to stand here. So try taking the tailbone down so you're standing in your plumb line. Notice that what might happen is you have this sense of extra tone or even tightness that goes around the tailbone. Right? So that's neither recommended nor not recommended. I'm only saying let's notice it. That when your toes are up and your heels are down, to stand in this plumb line, you might sense, oh, yeah, we're kind of squeezing right near the sitting bones and the tailbone. Place your hands on your hips. Take a deep breath into your low belly. And as you exhale to come forward, don't swing your hips backwards, but rather try to sense that you can bow over your femurs, over your thighs, and the pelvic floor is changing shape as you come down. And inhale, rise up to standing. Press down into all 10 toes. Lift your inner arches. Tone your inner thighs. And when you arrive, notice the tone at the tailbone. And then as you exhale to glide forward, you have to slowly release the tone at the back of your pelvic floor to allow you to bow forward. At the same time, you have to slowly increase the tone at the front of the pelvic floor to stabilize you. Your body already knows this. So inhale, glide forward through your heart. Rotate your pelvis over your femurs. You're rising up, the back of the pelvic floor becomes more toned. Last time, please, to come forward. Notice the changing shape of the pelvic floor. And then place your fingers on the floor or on some blocks and tippy toe high up on your blanket like we did in Friday's class. This is your inhale. And then exhale and very slowly lower your heels down to the floor. touch them lightly. Inhale, rise up to your tiptoes, raise your heels. Go up at the pace that your inhale and your movement finish together. And exhale, lower your heels down. Okay, one more time. Inhale, glide up. And then exhale to lower down. Planting both heels, please shift your hands to your hips. Don't rock backwards, but rather roll yourself upright to come up to standing. And then step backwards from your blanket. And check to see again now, where is energy moving in your body? Come from an observer witness place. You're not evaluating, this isn't a test. You can't pass it and you can't fail it. Okay, let's take 2 blocks now for the sun salutation, and we're going to do something a little bit unusual. We have done this before, but I'm going to review it with you. The blanket is going to be here forward for your feet to start on. So step up onto your blanket completely now so that neither the heels nor the toes are on the floor. That's right. The arches of your feet, there's a relationship there with your pelvic floor, I promise. It's not just yoga woo-woo. Okay, join your hands together. So spread the toes forward past your blanket roll. The heels aren't quite touching the ground either. Find your Ujjayi breath. Now while you're balancing on this blanket, continue breathing into the belly. Here comes the Surya Namaskar. Inhale, raise your arms up. Exhale for chair pose. So you bend the knees without the toes or the heels coming down. Where is your chair pose? Inhale, so the breath does touch the pelvic floor and the back waist. And then exhale, drape your torso over your thighs, touch the 2 blocks. And inhale, start to straighten your legs slowly as your torso cascades down. And then exhale for a deeper bow towards your legs. This time, inhale, glide your heart forward, raise up to your fingertips. Exhale, take your left toes straight back. So this is your basic lunge. Inhale, rise to your crescent lunge with your right foot on your blanket. I trust you guys have a strong practice. I see who's here for class. So please borrow my confidence in you for this practice right now. Bring your attention down to the pelvic floor. It's asymmetrical. Your left leg is in extension, your right leg is in flexion. Breathe in. When you exhale, sweep your arms wide, come slowly forward. As you touch the 2 blocks, keep your right leg stable. Inhale, float your left foot forward. Okay, and exhale, right toes back. Inhale, rise up, crescent lunge. And you're going to notice that again, the pelvic floor is asymmetrical. So placing your attention there, begin your inhale at the pelvic floor, then come up into the 2nd chakra and the sacrum. Then the breath can widen into your floating ribs. When you exhale, begin the exhale from your pubic bone towards the center of your pelvic floor, up the front of the sacrum, towards your solar plexus. Now with your exhale, sweep your arms wide, come slowly forward. Keep your left leg stable as you touch the 2 blocks. Please step backwards to plank pose. And then inhale, reach high to downward facing dog pose. Okay, exhale, right foot forward on your blanket. Inhale, left foot forward on your blanket. Exhale, bend both knees. We're coming into chair pose. Inhale, rise up, chair pose. Exhale, push down to rise up, upward hands pose. And inhale to open like a fountain. And then exhale, hands to your heart. Check and see if you're flaring your sitting bones or tailbone back behind you. Can you stand in your plumb line? Inhale, upward hands. Exhale, chair pose. Inhale in your chair pose. Exhale, drape your torso over your thighs, touch the two blocks. Here on the inhale, we just slowly straighten the legs and the torso cascades down. Then exhale for the deeper exploration in Uttanasana, from your pelvic floor up into the sacrum. Inhale your heart forward, open your spine, your heart, your throat. Exhale, left toes back. Inhale to rise, crescent lunge. Exhale, rotate warrior two. Now notice that again, your pelvic floor is asymmetrical. So if you drop your attention down to the pelvic floor while you're doing the pose, I believe you can do it. You have enough stamina. Drop your attention down and listen for the inner experience of the breath, pubic bones, sitting bones, tailbone. And can you direct the inhale to also come upwards to the second chakra and wide into the third? Your floating ribs, your back waist. And the exhale starts at the front of the pubic bone this morning and then towards the center of the pelvic floor, up the sacrum. Now we're going to inhale and windmill the arms over. And exhale to touch the two blocks. Pivot your left heel up. Okay, inhale, left foot forward, please. And exhale, right toes back. Inhale to rise, crescent lunge. Exhale, warrior two. Your pelvis will be asymmetrical. Good. Inhale. You can close your eyes, actually. I believe you can keep your balance. And sense on the exhale, what are you doing from the pubic bone in towards the center of the pelvic floor? Up the front of your sacrum. Each time you give consistent attention in your practice, you are recreating the inner sense of safety and stability that your system needs. You're also encouraging the vitality that your senses would love to live with. Vitality is very different than living from craving. With your next inhale, windmill your arms over your left leg. And as you touch the two blocks, there's your exhale. Please step backwards to plank pose with your exhale. Inhale, downward facing dog pose. And this time, exhale, left foot forward to your blanket and then right foot forward to your blanket. Inhale, glide your heart forward. Here comes chair pose. Please bend your knees. Rise up, chair pose. And then press down to rise up, upward hands pose. Please don't stick your butt out behind you. Inhale to open like a fountain. And exhale, hands to your heart. Step backwards to mountain pose. And observing again, not conducting, not directing your mind nor your breath. Observe what's happening. Notice what is occurring. Now I'm going to ask you to come down and sit on these 2 blocks like we were doing yesterday. So if you take the 2 blocks in a little triangle shape like this, please sit on your blocks in Utkata Konasana. Now how close the 2 blocks are is going to be dependent upon the structure of your pelvis. You can also say how far apart the blocks are. So to check, your blocks are on this little diagonal, and when you sit on it, if you roll back, you're going to feel the sides of the sacrum, but not the tailbone touching the blocks. When you come forward, you'll feel the outsides of the trochanters, but you won't feel the pubic bone or the tailbone, or even the sitting bones touching the blocks there. So when you roll this way, you got like the meaty bits, sometimes people call it that, and then start up in this place we call center. Rest your hands out over your knees. And drop your attention down into what's happening with the pelvis, the pelvic basin, the breath in your body. Now with your hands around your knees for support, straighten your elbows and roll back like you're doing cat pose with your spine. And when you roll backwards like this, notice that the back hemisphere of the pelvic floor will tend to be tighter than the front. Then roll yourself forward, come up, and bow forward. Bend your elbows, take your shoulders back, almost like your upper back is doing cobra pose. Notice the back hemisphere of the pelvic floor will tend to be a little bit more open right here. When you exhale, roll your spine up and back like cat pose. When you inhale, roll your spine up and forward like cobra pose. And try that a few times, so at the pace that your body is breathing. Notice any place in the movement of the body or the breath, any place where you become disconnected from what is happening, or any place where you become more coercive, or maybe you become not just like a leader, but too assertive or too aggressive with yourself. Or also where you might daydream or space out. And do this for 3 times more, please. And the next time that you come forward, so it's like your upper body is in cobra pose, you're forward in Utkata Konasana. At this point, place your hands on the floor in front of you. And I'm going to ask you to do a specific kind of breathing, building on what we've been doing. When you inhale, try to expand the back hemisphere of the pelvic floor. And when you exhale, tone the front hemisphere of the pelvic floor. And see if that tone can translate to a kind of moving up into the second chakra to say, again, to the five senses. You don't need to be wild horses. These five senses can be like a wise counsel. It's really during the exhale that you're watching this tone, beginning from the pubic bone to the center of the pelvic floor, up the sacrum into the second chakra region. And then please walk your hands back towards your feet, come upright, and sit once more in Utkata Konasana. If you can sit in the center of your Utkata Konasana, like the torso is a candle, and the base of this pose is like the candle holder. And then please bring your knees up to center. And you're going to sit. This is like a little bit like squatting, but you're not actually squatting, but we are sitting right between the two edges of the blocks. And yes, you're balancing on the back of your trochanters, and it might be tender. Yeah. Imagine a release happening from where the pressure of the block is, from the side of the thigh bone called the trochanter, in towards your sitting bones, in towards your tailbone. And just invite there to be a kind of gentle but consistent release. We hold a lot of anxiety in the pelvic floor. We aren't even aware that we're doing it. So this is a chance to have awareness. Now with these two blocks, I'm going to ask you to sit slightly forward of them so that you're not on them. And then take the two blocks, place them to be ready so that when you lie on your back here, you're going to have the blocks within reach. You don't need them just yet, but please have them within reach. When you lie down, watch out for painful hair clips. Put those aside. Please take both legs out straight on the floor. Now, at the heels, you're going to make this gentle rocking action where the toes go forward, back, forward, back. It should feel natural, normal, not contrived. But if you've never done it, it might feel contrived at first. So as you're rocking the feet, the whole body gets a little rock with that. And I'm going to ask you to keep that rock going for about 90 seconds. And as you're rocking, make the effort only from your feet. It's not from any other part of your body. The rest of your body is just responding to the rocking. A little bit longer. Continue with your rocking. Think of it as a chance to release tension. It's often the kind of tension that doesn't have any words associated with it. The tension we didn't even know we were holding on to. And then let this rocking become ever so slightly more still, more still. And then invite your body to become deeply still. Rest your eyes and your mind down in the pelvis. So there's a place of homecoming there. Nourishing your vitality by not allowing the senses or the mind to wander off right now. Now place your fingertips on your hip bones. Okay, so these are the bony landmarks at the outsides of your hips, and then bring your fingers very slightly in, like one finger width, one little tiny finger step in. So then you're on the muscles attached to the ilium that go horizontally across the pelvis. One of those muscles is your transverse abdominis. So when you next exhale and you're toning from the front of your pubic bone to the center of the pelvic floor to your sacrum, it would be ideal if you also sensed that that tone causes the muscles under your fingers to gently tone and hollow in. They don't push out. This muscle tone is going to hollow the belly in slightly. And try that again. Inhale. And then exhale, begin toning from your pelvic floor on the front hemisphere, so pubic bone. And then tone inside the sacrum. Release to your inhale thoughtfully. When you exhale, start the tone from your pubic bones to the center of your pelvic floor and then inward on the sacrum. Inhale, you'll release the tone of the belly slowly. And then exhale once more. With the tone that you're creating right now, let it be breathable. Sustain this tone as you bend your right knee and slide your right foot on the mat to bring it up. Your pelvis should have remained stable. Slide your right leg back out. The pelvis should also be stable. Not because your belly's working any harder, but because these muscles are toned here and you're breathing. Slide the left knee up. So in sliding, it should not feel like your pelvis becomes all cattywampus. Slide your left toes back out. Slide the right knee up, just sensing the tone that stabilizes your pelvis and kind of houses your senses right in here. Slide your right leg back out. And one more time, slide your left knee up. And the pelvis doesn't rock or become jostled about. Slide your left leg out. And then really gradually release the tone of the belly. And reach for your 2 blocks, please. Okay, so these 2 blocks are going to go on the triangle spot again like this, and they're going to be flat under your sacrum. So when you do this, press into your toes and heels to lift your hips up and place the block so you can feel, if you pick up your knees, you would have a sense that you are resting on the back side of the trochanter bones, and the sacrum is in between the 2 blocks. And you can have the knees bent. The feet can be floppy like bunny ears, but do keep the knees hovering over your hips for now, please. And let the sacrum rest between the 2 blocks. Without moving your legs, I'm going to ask you to visualize that you would take the right toes out straight on the floor. Visualize that and see what happens in your belly. And then visualize that you would bring your right knee back to meet your left knee. Then visualize the left leg would go out straight. And visualize that your left knee comes back. Now we're going to actually add the action. So as you exhale, glide your right toes out on the floor. Keep the left leg very stable and the pelvis stable. As you inhale, float your right knee back up. As you exhale, glide your left toes out on the floor. As you inhale, glide your left knee back up. Exhale, right side. If you aren't sure that you have tone across the front belly, you can return your fingertips there. Inhale, right knee back up. Exhale, left leg out. Inhale, glide it back up. And now let both knees fall towards your chest. We do want your blocks to stay put as the knees come into the chest. Notice where the breath is able to go here. And when your knees come to your chest, we want gravity to be helping with this. It should not feel like a big effort on your part. And then I'm going to ask you to lightly touch your toes down. We're going to put the blocks up on the medium setting. One more exploration here. So when the blocks go up medium, it's like doing supported bridge pose. And I do want your blocks to be stable there. Place your feet flat on the floor. And let the torso relax. It's a supported bridge pose, so I'm not going to ask you to try to puff the chest up or overactivate your shoulder blades. Okay, so placing some gentle tone across your seatbelt muscles, that is from your transverse abdominis. Your obliques will add to that, but the TA is the most important, most intrinsic muscle there. Then float your right knee up. Float it in towards your chest. And float your right leg out from your right hip towards the floor. And see if your pelvis can be stable as you float your right knee back to your starting position. Float your left knee up with the pelvis stable. Glide your left knee in towards your chest. And glide your left leg out from your left hip towards your toes with the pelvis being stable. And then glide that back in. Pick up both knees. If you want to, you can hold the blocks for extra security or put your fingers there. I'm going to ask you to rock your knees in towards your shoulders. And then rock your knees up away from your shoulders. And go just very slightly past vertical with your knees. Don't touch the toes all the way down. And then knees in towards your chest. And then rock the knees back up. So you are massaging the sides of the sacrum right now. And you might start feeling really mentally sleepy. You could be feeling agitated. Try to stay at home in the pelvis. And what that means is giving your consistent, kind, and non-judging attention to the inner experience of your pelvis and your breath. We're going to do this a couple times more. So The stability, the consistency, the poetry of your own movements, these things do matter. Now, each time that you bring your knees in towards your chest, at the end of that movement, there is this possibility that you feel this inner quality of hollowing the low belly. And each time the knees go forward from the chest, it's possible that you could have a sense of stability across that same region in the low belly. We can touch the toes down, press into your heels, pick up to an active bridge pose, put the two blocks aside, reach under to clasp your hands if that's how you do bridge pose. Otherwise, you can just clasp tuck the shoulder blades under the heart, excuse me. Now, if you want to check the stability that you've been creating in your practice, of course, you can just stay in bridge pose as you are, but another option is to pick up your right knee. And you could either have the leg straight or bent. And you touch the right foot back down and you check and see what is the stability you're creating if you pick up the left leg. Leg could be straight, leg could be bent. Touch that one back down, bridge pose. And then reach your arms overhead and we're going to roll the spine down one vertebrae at a time. And as you're rolling down, you get to the lumbar spine. And just before you get to the sacrum, pay extra careful attention. Then the top of the sacrum and the middle of the sacrum. And then stretch your legs out. Bring your arms down. Come to a flat lying Shavasana for a few minutes. And don't underestimate the power of what you've been doing in your practice. So keep your mind at home and the vitality held at the second chakra. So rest your attention in the pelvis and imagine that you're coming concentrically more inward towards the place where your senses, they have this like tiny wise council, the five senses gathered together to reflect on how best to serve you on your journey. Each of the senses is willing to be less committed to craving and aversion. Each sense more willing to live in the sattvic sense. So keep your mind at rest in this tiny council, this little circle of your senses gathered. in wisdom at the second chakra. Continue to rest your attention right there. A small circle where your senses have gathered to come to the internal world. Invite the senses to be deeply renewed in this gathering, this council. They are together agreeing not to be so captivated by desire or craving, aversion or resistance. As you stay at home with your senses, let that become even sweeter, this homecoming. Each of the senses relaxing, releasing the habit of grasping, clinging, the habit of flinching, averting. And simmer in this quiet for 1-2 minutes more. Just really resting the mind, your senses. You're down at the second chakra, just above the pubic bone, right across those two hip bones in the center there, near to your sacrum. Now, without disturbing your mind, begin gently inhaling into this wise counsel, inhaling into the second chakra, just a light little breath. And exhale from there. You could imagine if this water were like the ocean and there was a tiny boat on the surface of the ocean. The wave of the breath is just so gentle. And the council of five senses, they're surfacing back into awareness of daily life. And how would your senses recommend you live today? When you're ready to, you can put a little tone across your abdomen, your seatbelt muscles, and try bending your left knee without the pelvis jostling. Try sliding the right knee up without the jostle. And then roll to your side. And rest on your side for a few moments. And then press yourself up to sitting. And if you're comfortable doing so, come up to sit cross-legged with your two blocks. So take the blocks like this. Sit on your blocks here and cross your ankles underneath. And come up to sit so that you have a stable base. Yeah. Hands out over your knees. Now, my hope is that you can sit in such a way as there's only the amount of tone required to sit upright. Nothing more distracting than that. Invite your senses to stay at home here in the second chakra, also called the dantian, the lower dantian. So the council of the senses would be able to be advisors upwards to the third chakra. How would you put wisdom into action. How will you act on what you know to be most deeply true? And if you understand that not coming up to the third chakra and putting wisdom into action, this would imply that you'll stay in the lower three chakras, cycling through what yoga calls samsara. And to rise up to the heart, the fourth chakra, we do need to have the second chakra informing the third. The third chakra brings wisdom into action, and we rise up, releasing our grip on the self that has to be defended or decorated, the self that has to be proclaimed. We release our grip on that and move upwards to the heart, a sense of our collective self. You can continue to rest in the stillness. The senses are at home, and they advise your third chakra on discernment and wisdom. And then you can make the passage upwards to the heart. We release our self-preoccupation and come up to awareness of the collective, of which we are a part. And bring your hands together at your heart, please. And we can sing once more together. Om Bhurva Svaha Tatsavitorvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayata. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Pyo Namah. Hari Om. And with your exhale, you may bow your head to your heart. Release your hands.